Marty, you mentioned the emotional component of investor behavior. Can you help us to understand how emotions play a role in investing?
Yeah, it's odd. It's one that's overlooked. Oftentimes when we're talking about investors, it's pretty data heavy, and investments is pretty data heavy, the economy, all data heavy. But I think at the end of the day, we do have to sit back and realize that we're people, and our emotions have a huge impact on all of our lives, and this is one of them too. So, the first thing that I would point out, we're all familiar with this concept of flight or fight, in response to how our brains operate and how we react to threats. So again, obviously in today's world, we're not out in the wild trying to survive, but the reality is that our finances are essentially what provides us our personal safety and our structure and how we get ahead and educate our kids and retire and everything. So when that's threatened, what we do as humans is we tend to make bad decisions or essentially no decision at all, which can also be just as bad. And we can actually track this. In today's data-driven world, we can look at single investments, we can look at the markets, we can look across sectors. And what the data tells us is that people actually do the opposite of good old-fashioned buy low and sell high. And now immediately when I talk about the basics of that and I talk about emotions, oftentimes, especially seasoned investors, they'll say, well, that's not me. And so I like to ask a couple of questions. And the past 24 months has really created a lot of clarity on this. So the first thing I would ask someone who says, hey, this is not me. My emotions aren't playing any impact on this. I would ask that investor, what did you do in Q1, February, March of 2020? What did you do? What was the actions you took with your portfolio? Did you scrape together every single dollar you could get your hands on and use that and infuse that into the markets when they were down 20%? That's low. That's buying low. Buying in at 20% is low. So, I didn't have cash on hand. Okay, so did you reposition your portfolio and shift, non-market assets into the market was down 20%? Again, most people cannot say that they took any real action during that time for that asymmetry that we saw in the market because it was a very emotional time around COVID. So, this happens when the markets are up too. And it's the flip side of our emotions. Things are good, so we feel good and we don't make a lot of changes. And this one, again, history shows us this. Look what happened in the late 90s. We saw the tech bubble. Well, prior to the tech bubble bursting, that sector was doing so good, it was literally doubling and just compounding at astronomical rates. But people were so happy with the returns that one sector quickly came to dominate their portfolios. So when the tech bubble burst, it had catastrophic losses and devastated a number of people that were in that type of portfolio at that time because it felt good prior to that bubble bursting. So this really goes both ways, where our emotions get in the way in bad times when we feel threatened, but also in good times when we're kind of kicking back, feeling like all is good and we don't need to make any changes. So I think that's one thing that investors really need to get right and focus on, which is easy to overlook because this is such a data-driven piece of the world today.
Marty, earlier you mentioned that investors need to be right twice, and we just covered the emotional component. Can you expand on the strategic side?
Yeah, strategy is critical. I heard a saying a long time ago that stuck with me when I started in this industry. And, a long-term veteran had told me, they said, everyone has an investment strategy. The difference is some are well thought out and consistently modified, while others are simply left to chance. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think that held a lot of truth today, and I certainly think it holds, even more truth. I think it holds a lot of truth then, and I think today it certainly holds a lot of truth as things get more and more technical.